Good morning, everyone. I'd like to call the meeting to order, if I could. I will start with a roll call of the Board of Directors. Director Perotti.
Here.
Director Lemberger.
Present.
Director McQuarrie is absent for now. Director Sheeler.
Present.
Vice Chair Tabor.
Here.
And Chair Davis is here. We do have a quorum. Thank you all and welcome again to our meeting. It's been a while. We will start with a report regarding the posting of the agenda, please. Christina, can I have a report regarding the posting of the agenda?
I apologize. I thought I had unmuted. Okay.
It's been a while. So.
It has, yeah. Good morning. The agenda was posted on Friday, May 14th, 2021 at MTD's administrative office, mailed and emailed to those on the agenda list, and posted on MTD's website.
Good. Thank you very much. That takes us to the consent calendar. There are two items. Item 4 is the approval of the prior minutes for the meeting of April 20th, 2021. And item 5, the cash report. We will be asked to review and approve the cash reports for the periods April 10th through April 23rd, 2021, April 24th through May 7th, 2021. Are there any questions or comments on either of those two items?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to move approval of the consent calendar.
Great. Thank you very much, Director Tabor. I have a motion by Director Tabor to approve the consent calendar. Is there a second?
Second that,
Director Perotti seconded that. We will do a roll call vote. We'll start right back at the top with Director Perotti.
Aye.
Director Lemberger.
Aye.
Director McQuarrie is absent.
No, I'm here.
Oh, they're here now. Let the record
I was
show
charging my iPad.
let the record show that Director McQuarrie is joined us. This is the vote on the consent calendar. Director McQuarrie.
Aye.
Right. Director Sheeler.
Yes.
Vice Chair Tabor.
Yes.
Chair Davis votes yes. The consent calendar is approved unanimously. Including consent calendar takes us to item 6. This is public comment. This is the period for anyone who wishes to speak for the public on items not on today's agenda, but within the purview of the MTD. Madam Clerk, do we have anyone wishing to speak under public comment, general public comment?
Chair Davis, I don't have any hands raised and I have no emailed public comment.
Good, thank you very much. Moving right along. Takes us right into our first content item, item 7, the annual service plan. Staff will recommend the Board of Directors receive a presentation of the draft final service plan for fiscal year 2021-22 and consider approval of the plan. Mr. Stroud or Ms. Blackerby?
Good morning, Chair Davis, members of the board. Welcome. This, of course, is the second time you'll be hearing this item. We're bringing it to you. I would like to hand this off to Hillary Blackerby, our planning and marketing manager at this time, to provide you with the presentation and update of where we are. Hillary.
Great. Thank you. Good morning, Hillary.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair and members of the board. Hillary Blackerby, planning and marketing manager, and wanted to go through our draft final, which hopefully after today will be final service plan for annual changes in August of this year. So just as a review, we went over this about a month ago, but these are the changes that you sent us out into the field with to propose. And like I said, it'd go into effect this August 16th, 2021. These were the proposed changes, and we'll get into finer detail on the slides coming up next. But we were looking at partial or full restoration of lines 15X, 16, 27, and 28. We are recommending continued suspension of lines 10, 36, 37, 90, 91, and 92, and then the termination of the downtown and waterfront shuttles. Just a reminder, I won't dive too deep into this, but the things that are driving our decisions, especially this year, public health, that's, everything we've been doing to keep our employees and the public safe, capacity on buses, fiscal stability, certainly very lucky we received these federal funds to hold us over. We want to make that money last until our ridership, the pandemic's over and our ridership's back up to where it was before the pandemic. School closures and schedules and everything about that continues to be the most complicated part. And then, of course, workforce constraints, not being able to do the service unless we have the bus operators to make it happen. So with that, let you know what we did out in the public. So we went, since our last board meeting, we launched our survey explainer that explained all the proposals and then had the ability for people to weigh in with their feelings and their thoughts. We did get, just from the survey, 112 responses. We also got different feedback, people emailed or they sent something, through our website. So that's not captured in that number, but certainly people reached out mostly about the downtown and waterfront shuttles. I gave 2 presentations at our own virtual meetings that folks attended, one in the evening, one at noontime on a weekday, presented to the Isla Vista Community Services District board meeting last week and the Coast General meeting. So trying to go where the people are, but also hold our own events. And then we put a lot out on our social media and got quite a lot of press coverage. Normally our service changes don't warrant any coverage from the local media, but of course, the specific piece about the downtown and waterfront shuttle were particularly of interest to the public and the media. So generally, the feedback themes on the the proposals we put out there, people generally seem to understand about the levels of service for City College and UCSB. The public doesn't know, the institutions don't really know to what extent they're going to come back in the fall yet. So people were mostly understanding about, we'd like to see the 15X come back, but people also understood, if you don't have the folks or if there's not as many people out there, maybe you don't have to go as full at first. Strong support, of course, for downtown waterfront shuttle to continue in some form, and then desire for the seaside and crosstown shuttle services to return. Those specifically, I'll talk about, but there were a lot of, particularly seniors, who were missing those seaside and crosstown shuttles because it was really easy for them to get from their neighborhood to where they wanted to go. So restored lines, the feedback was either sounds good or bring them back now, not wait till August, or of course, bring them back at full strength. Understandable, but also we have reasons why that's not possible. Continued suspension on these lines. There's really strong support for Seaside Shuttle. People really missed it in Carpinteria, crosstown, particularly, like I said, by seniors. There were actually a few comments in support of line 10, and people thought, well, one, people understood why the first last mile 90, 91, and 92 weren't running because those peak trains weren't running, but there was really stressing the importance for those lines, the Seaside Shuttle and the downtown and waterfront, the importance of having that Amtrak connection in some form in really Carpinteria, Santa Barbara, and Goleta. So that came out in comments and discussion throughout the outreach period. And then the Seaside Shuttle, say that 10 times fast, Seaside Shuttle routing change, which we'll get to towards the end. There was some support for the El Caro route, but the Shamara alignment seemed to serve the neighborhood better, and we agree with that assessment. So specifically about downtown Waterfront Shuttle, and this was the bulk of what people were engaging with us on. It was locals, obviously, that's who's responding to our outreach. Locals were concerned about mobility for locals, but also for visitors. So, I know sometimes there's this dichotomy of like tourists versus locals, but the locals were actually like, we want the visitors to be able to get around. Seniors and people with disabilities definitely weighed in and said they rely on this service to get around, and that's how they get around downtown. There's also concerns about what this would mean for traffic and parking congestion should the service go away permanently. Many folks were sort of trying to problem solve and encourage the use of Chapala and Anacapa instead of State Street, right? Because it's closed. It's something we do on farmers market, or we did on farmers market days on Tuesdays. So people were, asking for that. And then people were concerned over the city funding cut, right? They were encouraging, we don't know if they all reached out to the city as well, but they were just saying, they just need to find the money elsewhere in the city budget. East Beach residents, also folks who live kind of over by the zoo, El Escorial and those areas, they were saying that they really did use the Waterfront Shuttle to access downtown. And then people were generally concerned about how will we get to the zoo, get to the waterfront, harbor, Stearns, and also mentioned the cruise ships about how they're going to get around when they arrive. And so broadly, there was an interest in, people understood why it can't run right now, today, tomorrow, but an interest in maintaining suspension if necessary, not termination, and trying to see, if there could be some solution. So I wanted to share all that up front so that you all know what we heard from the public. So just as a quick overview, we went over this last month, but what we're recommending for service in August. Line 16, City College Shuttle, recommending to restore this at the new service levels that we were actually proposing in early 2020 before the pandemic. And so that's already built, and that's something we'd like to move to. It's still pretty good service. It's 20-minute service in the mornings, and then in the afternoon, as things sort of start to dry up on campus, it's every 35 minutes. And then the span of services will be extended almost 30 minutes for the last pickup at West Campus to be just before 6 o'clock. This is a weekday only service. Line 27 also recommended for full restoration when UCSB on-campus instruction resumes. And what I'll say about all of these, the one I just talked about, this one, and then the next two, all sort of related to the university or the community college. This service would return when those schools return to on-campus instruction. So, late September for UCSB, and then for City College, it's actually a week after the 16th. So they start a week after our service changes go into effect. So that's when these would start. So the line 27 would be restored to what's called UCSB in. It's currently running on UCSB out service when on-campus instruction resumes. 15X, so between City College and Isla Vista UCSB. This one and the next one, which is line 28, these are some serious workhorse lines. They carry a lot of people, but the other side of that coin is it takes a lot of resources. It takes a lot of bus operators. It takes a lot of buses. So we wanted to be realistic about what we can provide so that we can make our service, knowing what our workforce levels are and will likely be then. And so we're recommending, at least for August, partial restoration when City College comes back in for 15X. So what does that mean functionally? What it was before the pandemic, Monday through Thursday, there was service. For a lot of the day, service was every 15 minutes. Sometimes it was 30 minutes. And it went till about 10 p.m. And then on Fridays, there was a shorter day and it was less frequent. And then there's sort of an alternate service later in the year, summer and all that stuff, which we don't have to deal much with in the fall. So what we're looking at instead is, if you have an old schedule guide and you look at what Friday service used to be, which was less because there's just less activity on campus, we're taking that, which is about 30-minute-ish headways from about 7 a.m. until 7 p.m. And then that's what Friday used to be. And then we're extending the span of service through to 10 p.m. on Monday through Thursday, and keeping that, it would end up being about an hour headways in that evening time, which is less used, but certainly people still ride at that time. And then Friday, it'd just be what it always was, which is lesser service, and it winds up a few minutes before 7 p.m. Line 28, the workhorse for sure. But this is very resource intensive with bus operators. We had 10-minute headways last before the pandemic. And so that is takes a lot of people and takes a lot of buses that we're not quite sure we're going to have by August. So what we're recommending is scaling that back slightly. It's going to be around an 18-minute headway on weekdays. And then weekends will stay the same. It's about 30 minutes. Later in the evening, 28 has a really long span of service. It starts in the 7 o'clock hour in the morning and goes till about midnight. So in the evening on weekdays, it starts to peel off and be less frequent in the evenings, but it's still running until then. So 18-minute headways. And, we think this is still going to serve a lot of people. Likely we'll have those articulated buses out there. But we still don't have any details about how many people are going to be living in the dorms out towards the end of IV. So San Joaquin, Santa Catalina, Sierra Madre. I know that the university is waiting for guidance from the state public health department about sort of those congregate settings. Can they have more than 2 to a dorm? Can they, so they still don't have those answers. So that's why we still don't have those answers. But either way, this is really what we think the level that we could run at with what we have. So the Seaside Shuttle, and I'll talk about the suspensions in a second, but I just wanted to go over the routing assessment. It's currently suspended. We're not recommending to bring it back right in August, hopefully sometime later in the year. But we did assess the routing, and we are recommending the Shamara alignment with a new stop on Shamara and at Haida. And I don't think I put the maps in here, but we showed it to you before. Basically, instead of going on Ogun Road, it would go on Shamara through the neighborhood, and we would place a new stop there. So continued suspensions. Line 10, which is the very infrequent Cathedral Oaks corridor line, Seaside, Crosstown, the Amtrak first last mile. Normally we love to just do one service change a year in August. It's pretty clear that's not possible this year, which is fine, because that would mean we may be able later in the year, as the conditions improve, to bring back some of these services. And so we're going to keep assessing constantly, work with operations and maintenance and everyone to know, like, what do we have the capacity to do? And so we're in touch constantly, and we'll be assessing our capacity throughout the year for possible restoration of service as we switch over bids. here's the Seaside Shuttle maps. This is the existing routing. This is the Shamara routing with the new stop here. And that was O'Carroll Lane. So service termination. We recommended that the downtown waterfront shuttles, it's line 30 and 34. I apologize, an earlier presentation had this 30 and 31. We changed the number a couple years ago, actually. At this time, it's fairly clear that the city of Santa Barbara Public Works and MTD do not have the sort of combined fiscal or workforce resources to continue the service at this time. But we do intend to be a part of the conversation on the future of State Street. The State Street Advisory Committee is, I think, applications are due in 2 days. And whoever gets on it, transit has to be a component of the conversation, how people get around downtown other than driving and biking and walking. So kind of no matter what happens, no matter what you all decide today, whether it's termination or suspension, and just a reminder that that contract expires at the end of June 2022. So, but whatever happens, we promise that we will be part of that conversation about the future of downtown. And it's, you know, obviously vital that we be a part of that. And that is my last slide. So with that, go to any questions from the board.
Great. I'd like to do questions from the board. I'll look for public comment, then we'll come back to comments by the board and possible action. So let's stay at questions at this point. Director McCrory.
Yeah, a couple of things. I know in the past it's been a struggle to keep our sufficient number of drivers, but it sounds like here lately it's gotten worse. Is that the case? I mean, what's happened with the drivers? Is it, you know, is the shortage new, or is it just something that we continually struggle with? It just seems like everything is contingent upon the availability of drivers, and in the past that really wasn't a major question.
Yeah.
That's one question, but I have others.
Oh, yeah. Let Jerry answer that one, Chuck, and then we'll come back. We'll continue with you for a second.
Sure.
Go ahead, Jerry.
It was definitely an issue even prior to the pandemic. You know, we had a driver shortage to a certain extent, but the pandemic made it much worse. Quite frankly, one of the issues is the fact that, you know, DMV suspended all behind the wheel testing. So we weren't really able to replenish our workforce. We've taken steps to be able to do that ourselves. And I've mentioned that to the board. Mr. Castanon, there's a lot of credit in our operations department for leading that. And we're now certified, you know, to be able to be essentially our own DMV examiner. So we are aggressively trying to hire and bring those numbers up, which is why the recommendation is to reintroduce services during driver bids if we have sufficient folks to go ahead and get the work done. But yeah, it's been a little bit worse recently.
Okay, thank you.
Continue, Chuck.
And the other thing, I'm glad to see you had a note on there on discussions with the city about the future of the shuttle on State Street, because it seems like, I guess, how long the city maintains the current structure on State Street. I'm not sure whether the city has, how deep they looked at that, but certainly it's going to have an effect on how we route the shuttles. And you know, having the shuttles go around the loop around the city as opposed to State Street, you know, how effective that could be, I think is really questionable. So I'm glad to see that you're involved with discussions in the city. And then my last question, it's actually a memory failure on my part. Is line 4 still in operations or not?
Yes,
I have my bus book with me.
How dare you? Yes, line 4 and 17 are still interlined. So serving the Mesa and Lower West City College.
Okay, because that seemed like that was, you know, when that came in, a lot of people loved it because you could get up to the Mesa, so quickly. So I'm glad to see that it's still there. So
Yeah, it's very popular.
other than that, it's watch the bouncing ball when you do your service, and I really have empathy for you trying to keep up with all the things that you've mentioned. It's really a challenge. So I admire the work that you've done thus far, keeping those buses going. Thanks.
Great. Director Parodi.
Thank you, Chair Davis. I guess my question is about the booster buses in the schools. How are we doing with that? What's happening?
Great question. It's going fine. It's definitely the most sort of volatile part of our service because we plan on a little bit longer of a horizon, although we've gotten much faster. But we have to know, like, what are the bell schedules and things like that. So right now they're all running. We're having to boost some of the boosters because we're only fitting 20 on board. But we've not left anybody behind. So that's a relief. We've got like 3 more weeks till the end of school, or not even 3 full weeks. And so everyone's looking forward to that. And then there's summer school.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's something I do want to mention. There's summer school happening at schools where there's not normally summer school. They're expecting more people, more students to attend for sort of credit recovery, just catching up on that learning loss that happened over the year. And so what we've devised is high schools are doing it for 6 weeks. Junior highs are doing it for 3 weeks, the first 3 weeks of that 6-week period. So we've devised one booster for each school. So Goleta Valley, La Colina, Dos Pueblos, and San Marcos, because those are the ones that, everything else has our other regular service. And we've devised, one trip in the morning, one trip in the afternoon. We've actually created some new routes that kind of catch all. So we don't know by mid-June what our capacity will be. Maybe it'll be less, maybe it'll be the same, but we've said as far as what our resources are, we're not going to be able to boost these boosters. We're only going to be able to run one per school. So that's where we're at with that. And then for fall, we're still waiting on the bell schedules. They're reworking everything about it. So we have some possibilities that we're building, like hopefully this is what it's going to be bid for August, because it's time to already work on that. So anyway, to answer your question, it's complicated, but yes, students are getting to school on our buses.
It sounds complicated. Thank you so much for doing all the work that you're doing. It's challenging, I'm sure. Thank you.
Other questions, Director Lumberger? Go ahead, Jen. You're muted. Yep, you got it.
Thanks, Chair. Back to the downtown and the Waterfront Shuttle. I'm curious what, if any, conversations with the city have happened. I know you're talking about the State Street Committee, and what, if any, inclination there might seem to be from the city, even for 2022 for, re-upping.
Okay. I'll go first. I mean, early in the pandemic, there was, exchange of letters between myself and city staff. They obviously at that stage, the pandemic just hit, finances were a concern for everyone. They officially let us know that they were thinking about terminating. I think they talked about it publicly as well, due to the lack of funding. We responded essentially recommending suspension and amendment to the agreement to do so. Officially, it was never really resolved. At the time, there was so much going on. We both had, both parties had their hands full. We just moved on. In our agreement with the city, there is a section that allows MTD to suspend service if the subsidy is not forthcoming. So essentially, that's what we've acted on. And that's where we've been for the past year. In my letter at that time, that's what I recommended, quite frankly. And then it was a reassess at this point prior to the final year of the agreement. Based on casual conversation with city staff, it's pretty clear that they feel they still don't have the funding for the final year, which is why you have the recommendation you do. However, as was brought up in the last board meeting by the chair, you could take no action and we'd continue the suspension through the final year, which would allow us to continue to have conversations because we need to figure out what's going to happen with cruise ships, et cetera, see how things are going to play out with State Street. So that is an option to the board, is to take that path as well. So that's where we are, and happy to answer any questions. Ultimately, on that particular service, one of the things as staff that we're concerned with is the fleet itself. We've been able to repurpose that to other lines, but long-term, we really need to know if there's a commitment for that fleet. Otherwise, we'll have to make decisions with the entire fleet going forward.
Other questions? Okay, let me go to the clerk. Madam Clerk, do we have anyone who wishes to speak from the public?
I don't see any hands raised, and I have no emailed public comment.
Okay, so it's back to the board for any comments and or action. Mr. Estrada, thank you for bringing up my comments from last week relative to suspension. Again, I think the big unknown there is that, at least in the immediate year, is the cruise ships, right? Because in fact, that could still be some type of function that the city may wish to play if in fact they come back. The city withdrew the financial support. They're in a 2-year planning process. Our contract runs out within a year. So there's a lot of unknowns. And I guess my previous position was suspension is no harm, no foul. At least there's a place to start discussions from. So that's where I will be in any action. Director McQuarrie.
Yeah, just it's a comment or a question. In the past, the city, I think, has essentially funded the shuttles through their parking lot revenue. Have they mentioned in the future when people start coming back and using the parking lot, have they said anything about what's going to happen with the funds from that?
No, not directly about parking funds. We haven't heard, but historically, the city's used various funding sources. I mean, I think originally they used Measure D. Measure A was not.
Originally, they used redevelopment funding.
Correct.
It goes back that far.
Yeah, Measure D. I think it was, they used a number of different sources. And then eventually, I think maybe 5 years ago, 6 years ago, they moved it in to have the parking fund cover it. So that's where it was as of last year. Ultimately, that's really up to them how they want to go ahead and fund the service.
A lot, if you don't come to Santa Barbara, which I understand, it's not a big, the lots are full again. They're definitely being used. They're well used at this point. So it looks like they've bounced back. I don't know what that means financially, but it's something that, the activity is certainly back.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're at the board at this point looking for action. And I think, well, it's kind of a nudge. I think we're looking for action today to approve the service plan as presented. Am I correct, Hillary?
Yeah, the service plan is presented, but if you want to make a different sort of question, something on the shuttle. Yeah, Jerry.
Yeah, we put forward our recommendation that we came into the process with, but you made it pretty clear on the downtown waterfront shuttle that you wanted to entertain something different, which you're welcome to take no action on that aspect of the overall plan.
Director Sheeler.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to comment that it seems incongruous that the state is promoting integrated, seamless payment access to multiple connecting sources of alternative transportation, and that this service is now recommended to be eliminated. I looked to the staff report where it says we do have the option to continue the suspension of service. And the public feedback elicited strong support to continue the shuttles in some form. So that will be the direction I would like to direct staff, in addition to approving everything else that's been recommended.
How about a motion basically to approve the service changes, but take no action on the downtown waterfront shuttle, which would leave it in suspension?
That would be a motion that I would make.
Okay, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I will second that, Mr. Chair.
Okay, I think I have Director Tabor as the second on that particular item. Any comments on that before I go forward to a vote? Okay. I will go to the vote. Okay, on the motion, annual service plan approval as recommended by staff without the any action on the downtown Waterfront shuttle, which leaves that action in suspension. Director Perotti,
Aye.
Director Limburger,
Aye.
Director McQuarrie,
Aye.
Director Sheeler,
Yes.
Vice Chair Tabor,
Yes.
Chair Davis votes yes, the motion passes unanimously. Ms. Blackerby, thank you for the presentation. Thank you for all the hard work, as you've heard from the board. Really recognize what a tough year it's been for you and your staff, and continue the good work.
Thank you. Thank you, Board.
You're welcome. Okay, that moves us on to item 8, the general manager's report. Mr. Estrada, all yours.
Yeah, I'll be brief. 2 items I really wanted to highlight in this particular general manager's report. The first one is the progress we're making with Terminal 1 and our project with Southern California Edison to add 14 heavy-duty charging ports under the main canopy. That, as you can see in the report, the project is moving forward. We're getting hopefully forward to the moving forward so that we can actually submit the permit package to the city. It's going to be it's a complicated process at Terminal 1. It's not just going to the city, it's also working with the county with this particular site. But so far, so good. So I'm happy to see the progress we're making on that. Also, I wanted to congratulate really our staff and all of our employees on the initial findings from the Federal Transit Administration. We do a triennial review. Every 3 years, they come in and assess how we're doing in federal regulatory requirements. That's everything from drug and alcohol, satisfactory continuing control of assets, financial. And at this point, it appears in the draft report that we're going to have no findings. And we're really pleased with that. It's not easy to have a result like that. Kudos to everybody involved with that. It was a lot of hard work. And it's something that we're really proud of. So I wanted to recognize the staff and all the employees for their efforts. And that concludes my report. Happy to answer any questions you might have.
Great. Any questions for General Manager Estrada? Mr. Sheeler, Director Sheeler, Bill.
It's not a question, but I just wanted to back up what the General Manager Estrada said about that triennial report and the ability of MTD to be performing at such a high level consistently is really in admiration. So congratulations.
Thank you.
Here, here, here. Okay, no other comments on the General Manager's report. Takes us to item 9. This is a recess to closed session, real property negotiations under Government Code Section 54956.8. The property under discussion is 4678 Carial /149 North San Antonio Road. The agency negotiators, General Manager Jerry Estrada, District Outside Counsel Graham Lyons. Negotiating parties, a Chandler Partner and Con-Am Group. A negotiation of the price and terms of payment. Madam Clerk, do we have any public comment related to the closed sessions at this time?
We have no public comment at this time.
Good, thank you very much. No public comment. We will then go to closed session. Mr. Estrada, I will leave it to you to close the public session and enter the closed session. We will wait a few seconds until that's done. You'll let us know, and Mr. Lyons will join us.